I drove 600 miles through a December blizzard, white-knuckling my steering wheel as snow pelted my windshield just to hear my own son say the words that would shatter everything I thought I knew about family. "Oh, I wasn't expecting you, Dad." 6 words. That's all it took to unravel 35 years of fatherhood. I stood there on his doorstep, Christmas presents weighing down my arms, watching his face cycle through surprise, annoyance, and something else I couldn't quite place at the time. Behind him, I could hear my grandchildren laughing, the warm glow of Christmas lights painting everything golden, and for the first time in my life, I felt like a stranger looking in on someone else's happiness. What he didn't know was that I'd been paying his mortgage for 6 years. What I didn't know was that he'd been telling everyone I was dead. The signs were there long before that Christmas morning, but I was too stubborn, or maybe too hopeful, to see them clearly. It started with the phone calls, or rather, the lack of them. I'm Raymond Walsh, 61 years old, recently retired from the steel mill where I spent 38 years of my life. My wife Margaret passed 3 years ago after a brutal fight with cancer, and since then the silence in our old house had become deafening. Jared was all I had left. My only child, the boy I'd taught to throw a baseball, the young man I'd walked down the aisle at his wedding, the father of my 2 grandchildren who barely knew my name. The mortgage payments had been my idea. After Margaret died, I found myself with more money than I knew what to do with. No vacations to plan, no anniversary gifts to buy, no medical bills eating away at our savings. When Jared mentioned struggling to make ends meet with little Emma's daycare costs and Tommy's medical expenses, the boy has asthma, I quietly started making his mortgage payments. $847 every month, like clockwork. I never told him directly. I had the bank set it up so it looked like an anonymous benefactor, some kind of community assistance program. I thought if he knew it was me, his pride would get in the way. Jared had always been independent almost to a fault. Even as a kid, he'd rather figure things out himself than ask for help. But something changed after I started those payments. The calls became shorter. The visits became rarer. When I'd suggest coming over for dinner, there was always an excuse. Emma had a play date, Tommy was sick, Sarah had to work late. When I offered to babysit so they could have a date night, they suddenly had other arrangements. I told myself it was normal. Young families are busy. People grow apart. But deep down, something felt wrong. The breaking point came in November when I called to discuss Christmas plans. I'd been calling for 3 days straight, leaving voicemails that went unanswered. When Jared finally picked up, he sounded different, distant. "Hey, Dad. Sorry, been crazy busy here. I was hoping we could talk about Christmas. Maybe I could come up, spend a few days with you and the kids." There was a pause. Too long of a pause. "Well, actually, Dad, we're not really sure what we're doing yet. Sarah's family might come into town, and you know how small the house is. I could get a hotel. I just want to see the grandkids open their presents. Let me talk to Sarah and get back to you." He never got back to me. 2 weeks passed. Every time I called, it went straight to voicemail. I started wondering if I'd done something wrong, said something offensive, forgotten some important boundary. I replayed our last conversation over and over, searching for the moment I'd crossed some invisible line. Finally, I decided to just show up. It was Christmas, after all. What kind of grandfather needs an invitation to see his family on Christmas? I should have listened to that little voice in my head telling me something was very, very wrong. The drive to Jared's house normally took me about 4 hours, but the snowstorm turned it into a 6-hour nightmare of white-knuckle driving and rest-stop coffee. I kept telling myself it would be worth it when I saw Emma and Tommy's faces light up. I'd spent weeks picking out their presents. For Emma, a dollhouse I'd built myself in the garage, complete with miniature furniture and tiny LED lights. For Tommy, a remote control airplane that I thought might help him with his coordination. For Jared and Sarah, I'd gotten them a weekend getaway to that bed and breakfast they'd mentioned liking years ago. When I finally pulled into their driveway at 11 in the morning, I noticed immediately that there were no other cars there. No sign of Sarah's family visiting. The driveway I'd helped them pave 2 summers ago was cleared perfectly, too perfectly, for a house supposedly overwhelmed with holiday guests. That's when Jared opened the door with that look of complete shock. "Oh, I wasn't expecting you, Dad. Not Merry Christmas, not great to see you, not even come in out of the cold, just surprise, and not the good kind." "Surprise," I said, forcing a smile and holding up the presents. "I thought I'd drive up and spend Christmas with my family." He stood there for what felt like an eternity, not moving aside to let me in. Behind him, I could see Sarah peek around the corner, and when she saw me, her expression darkened. She quickly disappeared back into the kitchen. "Dad, you really should have called first." "I did call, multiple times. You never got back to me. Yeah, well, things have been crazy here. I looked past him into the living room. Emma and Tommy were playing with toys under the tree, completely absorbed in their games. Neither of them looked up when they heard my voice. In fact, they seemed almost unaware that anyone was at the door. Can I come in? It's pretty cold out here. Jared finally stepped aside, but reluctantly. Of course, sorry. Just caught me off guard. As I stepped into the house, I immediately noticed how different it felt. When Margaret was alive, we used to visit every few months, and the house always felt warm and welcoming. Now it felt sterile, like a showroom rather than a home. Emma, Tommy Grandpa's here, I called out. Emma, now 7, looked up with a blank expression. Tommy, 5, actually hid behind the couch. Kids, come say hi to Grandpa Raymond, Sarah said, appearing from the kitchen with a forced smile that didn't reach her eyes. Grandpa Raymond, not just Grandpa. Emma approached cautiously and gave me a brief, awkward hug. Tommy stayed hidden. These were children I used to babysit, kids who used to run to me with outstretched arms. Now they treated me like a polite stranger. I brought presents, I said, setting the wrapped gifts under their tree. That's very thoughtful, Sarah said, but she was already gathering the packages and moving them to a corner. We'll open them later. Later, it was Christmas morning. I spent the next hour trying to connect with my grandchildren while Jared and Sarah bustled around creating busy work that kept them from sitting still. Every attempt at conversation felt forced. When I asked Emma about school, she gave one-word answers. When I tried to show Tommy how the airplane worked, he seemed more interested in his iPad. How long are you planning to stay? Sarah asked, not trying to hide the hope in her voice that the answer would be not long. Well, I drove all this way. I was hoping maybe through the weekend. The look that passed between Jared and Sarah was unmistakable. Panic. Dad, we actually have plans tomorrow. And Sunday we're going to Sarah's mom's. Note. I thought you said her family might come here. Change of plans. That's when I noticed something that made my blood run cold. On the mantelpiece among the family photos were pictures from what looked like Thanksgiving dinner. Recent pictures. A big family gathering with Sarah's parents, her siblings, all the kids around a massive dining table. But I wasn't in any of them. And more disturbing, there was no empty chair where I should have been sitting. That looks like it was a nice Thanksgiving, I said, pointing to the photos. Sarah's face went white. Oh, that was last year. But Emma was wearing the same sweater I'd sent her for her birthday 2 months ago. I left Jared's house that afternoon with more questions than answers. The drive home was a blur of highway salt and racing thoughts. Something was very wrong, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was missing something obvious. Back in my empty house, I poured myself a whiskey, something Margaret never would have approved of before dinner, and sat in my recliner trying to piece together the puzzle. The kids' reaction, Sarah's obvious discomfort, Jared's lies about their Thanksgiving plans. It all pointed to one terrible conclusion: they didn't want me around. But why? What had I done? I spent the next few days going through old text messages and emails looking for clues. Most of our communication over the past year had been brief and surface level. How are you doing, Dad? Fine, son. You good here too? Talk soon. That's when I remembered the mortgage payments. 6 years ago, when I'd started making those payments, I'd had to provide some documentation to the bank. They couldn't just accept anonymous payments without some kind of paper trail. I'd had to set up a trust, make it look official. The bank statements would show the payments coming from Walsh Family Trust, which wasn't technically anonymous, but most homeowners don't scrutinize their mortgage statements that carefully. But what if Jared had scrutinized them? What if he'd figured out the payments were coming from me? I drove to the bank the next morning and asked to speak with Patricia Mills, the loan officer who'd helped me set up the arrangement. She was a kind woman in her 50s who'd known Margaret and me for years. Ray, how are you holding up? I was so sorry to hear about Margaret. Thank you, Patricia. I'm doing okay. I wanted to ask you about those mortgage payments I've been making for my son. Oh yes, the Walsh Family Trust payments. Everything's been going smoothly. Your son's account has been current for years now. Has he ever called about them? Asked any questions? Patricia frowned thoughtfully. You know, that's interesting you ask. About 18 months ago, his wife called asking about the payments. She wanted to know where they were coming from. My heart sank. What did you tell her? Well, I couldn't give her specific details without your permission, but I did tell her the payments were coming from a family trust. She seemed, I don't know how to put this. She seemed excited about it. Asked if there were any other benefits or payments she should know about. Other benefits. Sarah had been fishing to see if there was more money coming. Did she seem to think the payments might stop? Actually, she asked specifically about that. Wanted to know if the trust had an expiration date or if the payments were contingent on anything. I told her I'd have to check with the trust administrator. That's you, of course. But she said not to bother, that she was just curious. I thanked Patricia and drove home in a daze. So Sarah knew about the money. She'd known for over a year. Which meant Jared probably knew too. But if they knew I was helping them, why were they pushing me away? Most people would be grateful, would want to maintain a relationship with someone providing that kind of support. Unless they were afraid I might stop. That evening I did something I'm not proud of. I drove back to Jared's neighborhood and parked across the street from his house. I told myself I just wanted to observe to understand what their normal life looked like when they thought no one was watching. What I saw broke my heart. Through their front window, I could see them having dinner together. Jared was helping Tommy with his food while Sarah cut up Emma's chicken. They were laughing about something looking like the perfect happy family. The warm light from their dining room made it look like a Norman Rockwell painting, and I realized this was their life. Their real life. Without me in it. But then I noticed something else. A man I didn't recognize came to the door. Jared answered it with a big smile, the kind of enthusiastic greeting he used to give me. They shook hands, patted each other's backs, and the man came inside. Through the window I watched him hug Sarah and pick up Emma, spinning her around while she giggled. Whoever this man was, he was clearly welcome in their home. He was part of their family in a way that I apparently was not. I drove home that night with a decision crystallizing in my mind. If they wanted to pretend I didn't exist, then maybe it was time I stopped existing in their lives entirely. The next morning I called Patricia Mills and told her I wanted to stop the mortgage payments. Are you sure, Ray, that's been a significant help to them over the years? I'm sure. End them effective immediately. What should I tell them if they call asking about why the payment stopped? I thought about it for a long moment. Tell them the trust has been dissolved. Don't mention me specifically, but I wasn't done investigating. If my son was going to treat me like a stranger, then I was going to find out why. And I was going to find out who that man was who'd received the welcome I'd been denied. The mortgage payment hit their account, or rather didn't hit their account, on the 15th of January. I knew because I'd been watching their mailbox like a hawk waiting for the past due notice that would inevitably come. It arrived on the 28th of January, a certified letter from First National Bank. I waited 3 days before my phone rang. Dad, it's Jared. I need to talk to you. No, how are you doing? No small talk. Straight to business. What's going on, son? Did you have anything to do with our mortgage payments? I could have lied. Should have lied, maybe. But I was tired of pretending. Yes. Silence. Long, heavy silence. For how long? 6 years. 6 years, his voice cracked. Dad, why didn't you tell me? I didn't think you'd accept help if you knew it was coming from me. And you just stopped. Without telling us, I stopped when I realized you didn't want me in your life. What are you talking about Christmas, Jared? The way you looked at me when I showed up. The way the kids acted like they barely knew me. The way Sarah couldn't wait for me to leave. Dad, you don't understand. Then explain it to me. Explain why my own grandchildren hide from me. Explain why you lied about Thanksgiving plans. Explain why I'm not welcome in my son's home. Another long pause. It's complicated. Complicated how? Look, can you start the payments again? Just until we figure something out. And there it was. Not, I'm sorry you felt unwelcome. Not, let me explain what's been going on. Just, can you start the payments again? No, Jared. I can't. Dad, please. We can't afford the mortgage without those payments. We could lose the house. Then maybe you should have thought about that before you decided I wasn't worth having around. It's not what you think. Then tell me what it is. I can't. Not over the phone. Fine. Come over. We'll talk face to face. I can't. Sarah won't let me. Sarah won't let him. My son was a grown man with his own family, and his wife was controlling whether he could visit his father. What do you mean Sarah won't let you? She thinks it's better if we keep some distance. Distance from what? From you, Dad. From the past. From the way things used to be. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. What way things used to be. When we were a family, Dad, please just think about starting the payments again. We can work through the other stuff later. No, Jared. We work through the other stuff first. Then maybe, we talk about money. He hung up on me. I sat in my kitchen for the next hour staring at the phone, waiting for him to call back. Waiting for an apology, an explanation, something that would make sense of what had just happened. The phone never rang, but that afternoon my doorbell did. I opened it to find a woman I didn't recognize, blonde, maybe 40, wearing jeans and a concerned expression. Are you Raymond Walsh? Yes, I'm Linda Patterson. I live next door to your son Jared. My heart started racing. Is everything okay? Are the kids? The kids are fine, but I needed to talk to you about something, and I wasn't sure how to reach you. What about... She looked uncomfortable, shifting her weight from foot to foot. Can I come in? This isn't really a conversation for the front porch. I led her to the kitchen and offered her coffee, which she declined. Mr. Walsh, I've been Jared's neighbor for 4 years now. I've watched Emma and Tommy grow up. I've had barbecues with your son and his wife. I thought I knew them pretty well. Okay. Last week I was talking to Sarah about holiday plans, and I mentioned that it must have been nice having you visit for Christmas. And she looked at me like I'd grown a second head. I felt my chest tighten. She said, Raymond Jared's dad, Raymond. And when I said yes, she said, oh, he died a few years ago. Cancer, I think. The room started spinning. She said I was dead. I was confused because I could have sworn I'd seen you around before. So I mentioned it to my husband, and he reminded me that we'd met you at Emma's birthday party 3 years ago. You brought that beautiful wooden swing set. I remembered that party. It was one of the last times I'd felt truly welcome in their home. So I asked around the neighborhood very casually, and Mr. Walsh, everyone thinks you're dead. Sarah has been telling people for at least 2 years that Jared's father passed away from cancer. I gripped the edge of the kitchen table so hard my knuckles went white. There's more, Linda continued gently. Last month there was a fundraiser at Emma's school for families who needed help with Christmas expenses. Sarah signed them up, said they were struggling financially because Emma's grandfather, who used to help them out, had died and left them in a difficult spot. They'd used my fake death to get charity money while I was paying their mortgage. I'm so sorry to be the one to tell you this, Linda said, but I couldn't stand by and watch this continue. Those kids deserve to know their grandfather, and you deserve to know what's been happening. After Linda left, I poured myself another whiskey and sat in Margaret's chair, something I never did, but I needed to feel close to her. I needed her wisdom, her calm perspective on family drama, but Margaret wasn't there to tell me what to do. I was on my own trying to figure out how my son had become someone I didn't recognize, someone who could lie so easily about my death, someone who could take my money while erasing me from his life. That night I made another decision. If Sarah wanted me to be dead, then she was about to find out what losing my financial support actually felt like. But first, I needed to know the whole truth, and I had a feeling there was still more to discover. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Sarah's face telling strangers that I was dead, saw my grandchildren being taught to forget I existed, saw Jared nodding along with lies that should have destroyed him to tell. By morning, I'd made a decision. I was going to Jared's house, and I was going to get answers. I arrived at 8 a.m. knowing Jared would be getting ready for work and the kids would be having breakfast. I wanted witnesses. I wanted Sarah to have to look me in the eye and explain why she'd killed me off in conversations with neighbors and teachers. Jared answered the door in his work clothes, the same blue button-down he'd worn to every job for the past 5 years. When he saw me, his face went through the same cycle of emotions as Christmas morning: surprise, annoyance, and something that looked an awful lot like fear. Dad, you can't just show up here. Watch me. I pushed past him into the house. Sarah was in the kitchen spooning cereal into Tommy's mouth while Emma ate toast at the counter. When she saw me, she actually gasped. Raymond, what are you doing here? I'm here to talk to my son about why his wife has been telling everyone I'm dead. The spoon clattered out of Sarah's hand onto the floor. Emma's eyes went wide. Kids, go upstairs and get ready for school, Sarah said quickly. But Mom, I'm not done eating now, Emma. The children scurried upstairs, sensing the tension in the room even if they didn't understand it. Dad, please, Jared started, but I held up my hand. Linda Patterson came to see me yesterday, Sarah. Nice woman. She was very confused about why you told her I died of cancer. Sarah's face went chalk white. I can explain. I'd love to hear it. I'd love to hear how you explain telling the entire neighborhood that I'm dead while I'm paying your mortgage every month. You were paying our mortgage? Sarah looked at Jared with genuine surprise. You knew about the payments, I said. You called the bank 18 months ago asking about them. I knew about payments from a trust. I didn't know they were coming from you. Jared looked between us like a trapped animal. Sarah, I told you. You told me what. She snapped at him. I told you my dad was helping us out, but you said... I said what? You said it would be easier if people thought he wasn't around anymore. You said it would be less complicated. The pieces were falling into place, and the picture they made was uglier than I'd imagined. Less complicated, how I asked. Sarah looked at me with an expression I'd never seen before. Pure resentment. Do you know what it's like having people constantly ask about Jared's father? Where's your dad? Why doesn't your father come to school events? Doesn't Emma have a grandfather? It was exhausting making excuses for why you were never around. I was never around because you never invited me. We invited you to things. You made everything awkward. Awkward how you asked too many questions. You wanted to know about every detail of the kids' lives. You had opinions about how we were raising them. You made suggestions about our finances, our house, our decisions. I stared at her. I cared about my family. That's what grandparents do. No, that's what controlling people do. You wanted to be involved in everything, and it was suffocating. So you decided I should be dead. Instead, I decided it was easier to tell people you weren't in the picture than to explain why you were barely in the picture. But I was in the picture. I was sending birthday cards and Christmas presents and paying your damn mortgage, which we never asked you to do because you never asked for anything. You both acted like you had everything under control, like you didn't need help from anyone. I had to find ways to help you without making you feel like failures. Jared finally spoke up. Dad, you don't understand the pressure. Sarah's family is very successful. Her dad owns 3 car dealerships. Her brother's a lawyer. When we got married, they made it clear that they expected me to provide for their daughter the way they had. And I couldn't live up to that, he continued, his voice getting smaller. I'm a shift supervisor at a warehouse. I make decent money, but not enough for the life Sarah wanted. When the mortgage payments started coming, it was like a miracle. Suddenly we could afford to keep up appearances. But Sarah didn't want her family to know the money was coming from my side, I said, understanding dawning. Her parents think we're doing great financially. They brag about how well Jared provides for me and the kids, Sarah said. If they knew we needed help, they'd think less of Jared. They'd think less of me for marrying someone who couldn't support his family. I looked at my son, really looked at him, and saw a man who'd been crushed under the weight of expectations he could never meet. A man who'd let his wife erase his father from existence rather than admit he needed help. So you killed me off to protect your pride. We didn't mean for it to go this far, Jared said quietly. It started with just telling Sarah's parents that you weren't really involved in our lives. Then it became easier to tell everyone that. And then when Emma started school, and they asked about grandparents for family tree projects, you told her I was dead. We told her you lived far away and couldn't visit. But she doesn't even recognize me, Jared. Your children don't know who I am. We thought it was better that way. Less confusing for them. I sat down heavily in their kitchen chair, the same chair where I'd sat 3 years ago helping Emma with her homework, while Sarah made dinner, and Jared told me about his promotion at work, when we'd been a family. The mortgage payments stopped permanently, I said finally. Dad, please, I'm not done. I looked at Sarah. You want me to be dead? Fine. I'm dead, but dead men don't pay mortgages. Dead men don't send birthday presents. Dead men don't babysit when you need a date night. Raymond, you're being dramatic, am I? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you wanted all the benefits of having me around without actually having me around. You wanted my money, but not my presence. You wanted my help, but not my involvement. I stood up and walked toward the door, then turned back. When you lose this house, and you will lose this house, don't you dare blame me. You made your choice. You chose pride over family. You chose Lee's over love. You chose to make me dead, so now I am. Dad, wait, Jared followed me to the door. Please, let's talk about this. We can figure something out, can we? Because it seems like you figured everything out already. You figured out how to get my money without having to see me. You figured out how to raise my grandchildren without mentioning my name. You figured out how to have a life without your father in it. That's not what we wanted, isn't it? Because that's exactly what you got. I drove home through tears I hadn't shed since Margaret's funeral, mourning not just the relationship I'd lost, but the illusion I'd been living under. I'd thought I was being a good father, a supportive grandfather. Instead, I'd been an ATM with an inconvenient emotional attachment. But the story wasn't over. Not yet. The foreclosure notice arrived at Jared's house, exactly 60 days after I stopped the mortgage payments. I know because Linda Patterson called to tell me. Mr. Walsh, I think you should know. There's been a lot of activity over at Jared's house. Men in suits, official-looking paperwork. Sarah's been crying on the front porch. I see. Are you okay? You sound tired. I was tired. Bone-deep, soul-tired in a way that sleep couldn't fix. Mr. Walsh, can I ask you something? Sure. What are you going to do? It was a good question. For 2 months I'd been living in a strange limbo, going through the motions of my daily routine while feeling like a ghost in my own life. Jared had called 6 times in the first week after our confrontation, but I'd let every call go to voicemail. His messages went from angry to desperate to pleading, but they all had the same underlying theme: start the payments again and we'll work everything else out later. But I was done being the solution to problems I hadn't created. I'm going to tell my story, I said finally. What do you mean? I mean, I'm going to tell people what happened. All of it. That afternoon, I did something I'd never done before. I created a Facebook account. Margaret had always handled our social media presence, and after she died, I'd seen no point in maintaining it. But I'd been watching from the sidelines long enough. I started with a simple post in a group called Grandparents' Rights and Support, a community I'd discovered while researching my options for seeing Emma and Tommy. My name is Raymond Walsh. I'm 61 years old, and for the past 6 years I've been secretly paying my son's mortgage while he and his wife told everyone I was dead. Yesterday they received a foreclosure notice. I'm not sure if I should feel guilty or vindicated. Mostly I just feel tired. I attached a photo of myself with Emma and Tommy from that birthday party 3 years ago, one of the last pictures of us together. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Within hours, I had dozens of comments from other grandparents sharing similar stories of being pushed out of their children's lives. But more importantly, the post was being shared beyond the original group. By the next morning, I had friend requests from people I'd never met, and messages from journalists asking if they could interview me. A local news station wanted to do a segment on grandparent alienation. Someone had started a hashtag numbered "dead but paying the bills." That's when my phone rang. "Sarah, what have you done?" she screamed into the phone. I told the truth. "You've ruined us. Jared lost his job because people were calling his work and harassing him. Emma's teacher called asking about the family situation. My mother wants to know why she's finding out from Facebook that you're alive. Maybe you should have thought about that before you killed me off. This is insane. You're destroying your own family." "No, Sarah. You destroyed this family 2 years ago when you decided I should be dead. I'm just making it official. The kids are asking questions we can't answer. Emma wants to know why everyone is talking about her dead grandpa being alive. Tommy is confused and scared. For the first time since this whole mess started, I felt a stab of genuine guilt. Whatever else had happened, Emma and Tommy were innocent victims in this war between the adults in their lives. Then tell them the truth." "What truth?" "That their mother lied to them about their grandfather, that their father was too weak to stand up for his own family, that we've been taking money from a man we pretended didn't exist." "Yes, tell them exactly that. I can't do that to them. But you could do this to me." She hung up. The story grew legs over the next week. A journalist from the local newspaper wrote a piece about my situation that got picked up by regional outlets. Someone created a GoFundMe page to help Jared and Sarah keep their house. It raised exactly $47 before being taken down due to questionable circumstances. But the most devastating blow came from an unexpected source: Sarah's own family. Linda Patterson filled me in on the details during one of her regular check-ins. "Sarah's parents showed up yesterday," she told me. "I've never seen people look so angry. They were there for about 2 hours, and when they left, Sarah was sobbing in the driveway." "What happened?" "From what I could overhear, and I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but they were pretty loud, her father was furious about the lies. Apparently he'd been bragging to his business associates about how successful his son-in-law was, how well Jared was providing for the family. Now he looks like a fool. And he's cutting them off. Completely. No more help with the kids' private school tuition, no more family vacations, no more emergency loans. He said if they needed charity, they should have asked for charity, not lied about their circumstances. The irony wasn't lost on me. In trying to maintain their pride with Sarah's family, they'd lost both her family's support and mine. But I still wasn't done. The final piece of my plan came together when I received a call from a lawyer named Jessica Chen. She'd seen my story online and specialized in cases involving financial elder abuse. "Mr. Walsh, I think you may have grounds for a lawsuit. Against my son, against your son and daughter-in-law, yes. You've been providing financial support under false pretenses. They've been accepting your money while actively working to remove you from your grandchildren's lives. In some states, that could constitute fraud." I thought about it for exactly 3 seconds. "Let's do it." The lawsuit made everything real in a way that Facebook posts and news articles hadn't. When Jared was served with papers, he showed up at my door for the first time since our kitchen confrontation. He looked terrible, thinner with dark circles under his eyes and a defeated slump to his shoulders. "Dad, please. This has gone far enough." "Has it? We'll lose everything. The house, our savings, trying to fight this lawsuit, maybe even the kids if social services decides we're unfit parents." You should have thought about that before you decided I should be dead. I know we made mistakes. Huge mistakes. But destroying us won't bring back the relationship we used to have. He was right, and we both knew it. The relationship we'd had was built on a foundation of lies and manipulation that I'd been too blind to see. There was no going back to the way things were. But maybe, just maybe, there was a way forward. The settlement conference was held in a sterile conference room downtown with Jared and Sarah on one side of the table, their lawyer next to them, and Jessica Chen and me on the other. Nobody made eye contact. Jessica had prepared a compelling case. 6 years of mortgage payments totaling over $60,000 made under the assumption that I was helping family members who wanted me in their lives. Evidence of fraud in the form of Sarah's lies about my death, which had been used to gain sympathy and financial assistance from others. A clear pattern of accepting my financial support while systematically removing me from my grandchildren's lives. My clients are prepared to offer full repayment of the mortgage funds over a 10-year period, their lawyer said. With interest, Jessica countered. With interest. I looked across the table at my son, who was staring at his hands folded in his lap. This wasn't the boy I'd taught to ride a bike, or the young man who'd asked me to walk him down the aisle when Margaret was too sick to do it. This was a stranger who happened to share my last name. I don't want your money, I said. Everyone looked up, surprised. Dad Jared's voice was small, hopeful. I don't want your money because you don't have any money. You never did. That's how this whole mess started. I turned to Jessica. I want something else. What do you want, Mr. Walsh? I want 1 hour a month with my grandchildren. Supervised, if necessary. I want them to know who I am and to understand that I never chose to be absent from their lives. Sarah started crying. Raymond, please, I want them to know that their grandfather loves them, even if their parents decided that love wasn't convenient for them. The kids are confused enough already, Jared said. This will just make it worse. No lying to them made it worse. Pretending I was dead made it worse. Teaching them that family members can be disposed of when they become inconvenient made it worse. I leaned forward. I'm not asking to be their primary caregiver. I'm not asking to undermine your parenting. I'm asking for the right to exist in their lives as their grandfather. 1 hour a month, 12 hours a year. Is that too much to ask? For $60,000? The room was quiet, except for Sarah sniffling. And I want something else, I continued. I want you both to get counseling. Family counseling, individual counseling, whatever it takes to figure out how you became people who could lie so easily to the people who are supposed to matter most to you. Dad, I'm not done. I looked directly at Jared. I want you to understand something. I didn't pay your mortgage because I thought you owed me something. I paid it because I love you and I wanted to help. But love without respect isn't healthy for anyone. I do respect you. No, you don't. If you respected me, you would have talked to me about your financial struggles instead of letting me find out by accident. If you respected me, you would have told Sarah that lying about my death was unacceptable. If you respected me, you would have found a way to include me in your life instead of erasing me from it. I stood up. Those are my terms. 1 hour a month with Emma and Tommy and proof that you're both in counseling. In exchange, I drop the lawsuit and forgive the debt. And if we refuse, their lawyer asked. Then we go to court, and I let a judge decide what my relationship with my grandchildren should look like. And I pursue every penny you owe me with interest and damages. Sarah whispered something to their lawyer, who nodded. We accept, Jared, said quietly. 6 months later, I picked up Emma and Tommy for our monthly visit. The first few visits had been awkward with a court-appointed supervisor watching our every interaction, but gradually the kids had warmed up to me. Emma remembered the dollhouse I'd built her, which had been relegated to the garage but was now back in her room. Tommy had finally worked up the courage to try the remote control airplane. We went to the park that afternoon, and as I pushed Tommy on the swings while Emma practiced somersaults on the grass, I felt something I hadn't felt in 2 years, like a grandfather. Grandpa Ray, Emma called out. We'd negotiated the Grandpa Ray instead of Grandpa Raymond, a small victory that felt enormous. Yes, sweetheart, why didn't we see you for so long? It was the question I'd been dreading and preparing for in equal measure. Well, sometimes grown-ups make mistakes and hurt each other's feelings. Your mom and dad and I had some problems we needed to work through. But you're not mad anymore. I looked at this beautiful 7-year-old who'd been caught in the middle of a war she didn't understand, and I realized that forgiveness wasn't something I'd been doing for Jared and Sarah. It was something I'd been doing for myself. No, sweetheart, I'm not mad anymore. And surprisingly, it was true. The counseling had helped. Not the family sessions. Those had ended after 3 awkward attempts, when it became clear that Sarah still resented my existence, and Jared was still too afraid of conflict to be honest about anything meaningful. But the individual counseling I'd started for myself had been invaluable. Dr. Martinez had helped me understand that I'd been trying to buy my way into my son's life and that my financial support, while well-intentioned, had enabled their dysfunction instead of addressing it. She'd also helped me see that my identity had become too wrapped up in being needed and that healthy relationships required boundaries I'd never learned to set. You can't control how other people treat you, she'd said during one particularly difficult session, but you can control how you respond to that treatment, and you can control what you're willing to accept going forward. As I watched my grandchildren play, I thought about the version of myself who'd driven through that blizzard on Christmas morning, desperate for connection and willing to accept scraps of attention in exchange for financial support. That man had been well-meaning but had lost himself somewhere along the way. This version of myself, the one who'd demanded respect, who'd set boundaries, who'd chosen his own peace over other people's comfort, felt stronger, lonelier sometimes, but stronger. My phone buzzed with a text from Jared. "Thanks for taking the kids today. Emma hasn't stopped talking about the airplane tricks you taught Tommy." It wasn't much. It wasn't an apology or an acknowledgement of everything that had happened. But it was something. A small recognition that I existed, that I mattered, that my presence in his children's lives had value. I texted back, "Thank you for trusting me with them." And I meant it. People often ask me if I think I went too far. If I should have just quietly stopped the mortgage payments and walked away. If I should have forgiven and forgotten instead of making our family drama public. The truth is, I don't know. I'm not sure there was a right way to handle discovering that your son has been accepting your money while pretending you're dead. I'm not sure there's a handbook for what to do when you realize you've been enabling the very people who are trying to erase you from existence. What I do know is that silence wasn't working. Hoping things would get better on their own wasn't working. Continuing to provide financial support while accepting emotional scraps wasn't working. Sometimes love has to be tough to be real. Sometimes you have to be willing to lose everything to find out what's actually worth keeping. I see Emma and Tommy once a month now, and it's not enough, but it's infinitely more than the nothing I had before. They know who I am. They know I love them. They know that their grandfather fought for the right to be part of their lives. Jared and I exchange polite texts about pickup times and special events. Sarah and I don't speak directly, but she's civil during our brief interactions. It's not the warm, close family relationship I used to dream about, but it's honest in a way our old dynamic never was. The house went into foreclosure as I knew it would. They're renting a smaller place now. And from what I hear through Linda Patterson, Jared has taken a second job to make ends meet. Sarah's relationship with her parents is slowly improving, built now on truth instead of lies. I don't feel guilty about their financial struggles. I feel sad about them the way you feel sad about any preventable tragedy. But I don't feel responsible for them anymore. The money I used to spend on their mortgage goes to a college fund for Emma and Tommy now, one they can't access until they're 18, one that can't be taken away if their parents decide I'm inconvenient again. I've also started volunteering with a grandparents' rights organization, helping other people navigate the complicated terrain of family relationships gone wrong. There are more of us than you might think. Grandparents who've been pushed out, parents who've been manipulated, children who've been used as weapons in adult conflicts. Every story is different, but they all share common themes: the toxicity of pride, the danger of financial enmeshment, the importance of boundaries, and the difference between helping someone and enabling them. I share my story not because I'm proud of how it all went down, but because I think there are other people out there living in the same silent desperation I was trapped in. People who know something is wrong but can't quite put their finger on what. People who are being taken advantage of by family members who've learned to weaponize guilt and obligation. If that's you, I want you to know your feelings matter. Your boundaries matter. You don't have to set yourself on fire to keep other people warm, even if those people are your children. Love doesn't mean accepting whatever treatment people decide to give you. Love means caring enough about the relationship to demand that it be healthy for everyone involved. Sometimes that means walking away. Sometimes it means fighting for what you deserve. Sometimes it means accepting that the family you dreamed of having isn't the family you actually have. But it never means pretending to be dead while other people cash your checks. So, what do you think? Did I go too far, or should I have done this sooner? Have you ever been in a situation where family members took your support for granted while pushing you away? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Sometimes the best healing comes from knowing you're not alone in your struggles. And if you're going through something similar right now, remember you deserve better than being treated like an ATM with inconvenient emotions attached. You deserve a place at the table, not just an invoice for the meal. Don't let anyone convince you that you should be grateful for scraps of attention in exchange for your generosity. Don't let anyone make you feel guilty for wanting to be valued as a person, not just as a source of financial support. And most importantly, don't let anyone make you disappear from your own life. You matter. Your story matters. And you have every right to demand that the people who claim to love you actually treat you like it.